Hi everyone, it's Katarina here. Welcome back to This Week in Biotech by Biotech Blueprint, edition number 72. Today I'm covering biotech and pharma news from September 26th to October 2nd, 2025. Just a quick note before I get started. Next week I'll be actually traveling back from Europe to the US on Thursday and Friday, so I might actually postpone publishing edition 73 until later Friday afternoon ET or Saturday morning. So I apologize in advance, but I have an interesting article coming up next week, likely on Wednesday, which I recorded back in July this year with Sensible Biotechnologies, and it will be with the CEO and their principal computational scientist about their work in mRNA manufacturing. So let's get into this week's newsletter. The White House is pausing the threatened 100% tariffs on patented drug imports to give pharma time to strike price deals. Pfizer reportedly has a 3-year grace period. Important nuance, Section 232 tariffs are still in play, so this is a tactical timeout, not a retreat. So this means that the near-term US pricing risk comes down a notch, but the negotiating leverage has shifted to DC. So next is the government shutdowns and what is happening to the FDA. So with the US government fiscal year 2026 funding not in place, the FDA is operating on carryover funds and exceptions. They'll keep outbreak response, high-risk recalls, and important screening running, but they're not accepting submissions that require fiscal year 2026 user fees, such as NDAs, BLAs, biosimilars, devices, animal drugs. Roughly 86% of staff are still working, and some routine work is curtailed. Expect filing delays and review slippage. Now we're going to go away from the government for a bit. Genmab is buying Merus for $8 billion in cash to acquire petosemtamab, a late-stage EGFR antibody for head and neck cancer. The deal is financed with cash plus $5.5 billion in new debt and is expected to close by early Q1 2026. Genmab is guiding to a first launch in 2027 and $1 billion plus sales potential by 2029 if trials and approvals go to plan. Genmab shifts from partner heavy to wholly owned launches to reduce reliance on royalties. Okay, next is Amgen. The company said that its 12,000 patient Vesalius-CV trial hit both primary endpoints. The drug is called Repatha, and on top of standard lipid lowering therapy, it cut major cardiovascular events in people who haven't had a heart attack or stroke. And there are no new safety issues across roughly 4.5 years of follow-up. And so full data will be presented at the American Heart Association scientific sessions on November 8th. Halozyme is acquiring Electrophy for $750 million upfront, plus up to $150 million tied to approvals. The price is called Hypercon, a way to pack biologics at very high concentrations so patients can get the same dose in a much smaller, under-the-skin injection instead of an IV. 2 partner programs could hit the clinic by late 2026, and Halozyme guides to royalties beginning around 2030 if those products make it through. This deepens Halozyme's subcutaneous delivery mode and broadens the licensing surface with big pharma partners. Metsera's monthly GLP-1 just posted up to 14.1% placebo-adjusted weight loss at 28 weeks with low GI side effects and very few dropouts. This is the drug that Pfizer is acquiring. It's called MET-097I. And this deal is valued at about $4.9 billion upfront plus milestones. Phase 3 is slated for late 2025. If monthly dosing holds efficacy with cleaner tolerability, as the company is promising, this becomes a real commercial wedge versus the weekly incumbents. And lastly, AbbVie is taking a bold stance on drug pricing in the UK. Alhere will debut at the same price as in the US, roughly $6,500 per 100 milligram vial. Now, the UK government is evaluating access. So this has to do with the most favored nation policy that Donald Trump is trying to implement, and it mirrors BMS or Bristol Myers Squibb and Cobenfy, signaling a push to raise prices outside of the US instead of cutting US ones. We'll have to watch whether confidential discounts bridge the gap or if we see delays and tougher negotiations on NHS coverage. That's it for this week. Thanks so much for coming back, for listening, and maybe for sharing Biotech Blueprint with your colleagues. I also want to draw your attention to the trends we're following. The Biotech Blueprint team built an in-depth investor-grade report called What Do Federal Reserve Cuts Mean for Biotech? And it is aimed at institutional investors, founders, and pharma biotech operators. You can find the report link to purchase this report toward the front of this week's edition. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next week.